your Space Force time brings an interesting question to the table. We've had this discussion a lot recently. Is the Earth flat?
Ah, let me try not to go a roundabout way to cross the street on this one. How much time do we got?
Take as much time as you need.
The short answer is I don't believe that it is. In fact, it is not. I don't want to offend the sensibilities of anyone who might feel otherwise, but I can talk about this for just a moment, and maybe a way that you won't find on a popular YouTube video, for example. I'm not going to appeal to the sciences immediately, but per se, I'm going to start with the religious aspect of this, because I've had a few friends send me videos about flat Earth who are genuinely convinced that the Earth is flat, and the videos they've sent me have invoked to start with the book of Genesis, and I can appreciate their effort to better understand Christian scripture on the one hand, okay, Jewish Christian scripture, but I'm not of the view that you are required to adopt a flat Earth model in order to properly understand Judeo-Christian scripture. I'm going to say that first, okay? I believe that there's a round Earth, and this is coming from both a fighter pilot and someone who did space-based missile warning operations from geosynchronous orbit, and we've launched satellites into low and medium and geosynchronous and highly elliptical orbits. And my entire adult life in the military was kind of predicated upon proper understanding of the reality that this Earth is as spherical as every other body throughout the cosmos.
Have you ever been in space?
No, I've sat at a desk.
Okay, so this is speculation.
No, it's not. But let me point out something. You know, Isaac Newton wrote Principia Mathematica, the mathematical principles of natural philosophy, and hundreds of years ago, he's trying to figure out the motions of the celestial bodies through observation and through mathematics. He's talking about gravity, which he admittedly said, I can observe it, I don't understand it, but he says it's clear to me that this is not something we're discovering in the modern age. These phenomena were observed and understood even better by the ancient peoples, and he specifically mentions the Chaldeans, and roughly the time period in which Abraham was visiting Egypt and Chaldea, about 2000 BC. It is not a new scientific either conspiracy or understanding that the Earth is spherical, but in fact, it's my view that it's been understood since the beginning of this, I'm going to put this very carefully, cycle of creation, that this Earth, as well as the other orbiting bodies in the cosmos, are spherical. And to understand those orbits and the way in which the grand designer or intelligent creator, the God of heaven, created those things, put them in their present orbits, I think is beautiful and lovely. And it's entirely and completely compatible with a religious worldview. But Newton believed it was known anciently. I believe that as well. And there's another philosophical principle at play here that I think is worth considering. I'm trying to go at this from maybe a non-conventional tack, because
no question triggers people more. Okay, to be honest with you, I don't get it. I don't understand it. But yeah, you don't be careful.
No, I'm not careful. Well, I'm careful always. But let me. But I try and be truthful. The ancient Hermetists had what they considered were 7 eternal principles that they claimed were keys to understanding the secrets of the universe. One of those 7 eternal principles was called the principle of correspondence. I like these principles. I particularly like this principle of correspondence. It can be explained as follows: as above, so below. As below, so above. And the idea is, if there's something you can't quite get at by observation out in the grand cosmic scene, maybe there's something right under your nose that might tip off some clue or understanding to how things work out there, and vice versa. Perhaps you can't quite get at what you're seeing under a microscope as you look at the electrons whizzing around the nucleus, and you can't quite get at the inner workings of these molecules and so forth. But maybe something that you can physically observe out there can teach you something about what's going on below. I believe that from the microcosmic level, both at the subatomic level, to the bubbles you can see floating all around you, which happen to coalesce into spheres as well, everything that you see on the earth, under the earth, all the way up to the grand cosmic level, with planets and stars, happen to be similarly situated, and a kind of fractal manifestation of each of the various planes of reality, both in the physical and in the spiritual sense. But it's an oddity to me that, having observed all that we can see on the earth, again at the micro level as well as at the cosmic level, the round spherical orbits of the bodies about us, and assume that the Creator in his divine wisdom thought it was somehow useful to make the earth itself flat. And I can appreciate, though, and I'll be generous, I mean, I can appreciate where people are coming from, because I've now looked into it a little bit, in asserting that, hey, I'm able to make a lot more sense of a highly symbolic and allegorical, in my view, creation account that Moses gives to us in Genesis, if I can presume that the earth is flat, that there's a dome over it, that there's water above the firmament, and I'm able to make more sense of these perfect eclipses of both the lunar surface as well as the solar disk. I think there's more beauty, in fact, in understanding the reality that these things are spherical. They've been properly placed in their orbits by an omniscient Creator who happened to so place them so perfectly in their orbits, held in their present orbits by his power, so that you can have, despite their distances and radically different sizes, a perfect solar eclipse.
So is the Bible a lie
eclipse.
then? Or, I mean, because you were talking about water being above the firmament, we're taught by God that that's what's true, right?
Yeah, these are good questions. I'm actually happy to talk about this as much as I am Marxism in the military, but I think every person has different views on this, that much of what is written in the Bible should be taken quite literally, and there are some things that are allegorical or symbolic, and some things are both. And so I suppose it's every person's obligation to go through and figure that kind of thing out.
But I mean, we're told
to think that there's a great deal of symbol in the Genesis story. What are we told explicitly?
That there's water above and below the firmament.
Yes, we are.
So are we supposed to just assume that that's just should be interpreted some way other than there is water above and below the firmament?
I think one can take that quite literally, but the way in which you model it or understand it can differ.
So, okay, let's do this, because I just have a couple of specific questions for you. So I'm on an aircraft, right? And I travel a lot. I'm at, we establish a cruising altitude of 36,000 feet, depending on where the chop is and all of this. The pilot deals with ATC to figure all that out, where the most comfortable ride will be. We're told that the Earth is rotating at 1,080 miles per hour or something like this.
At the equator, that's roughly true.
And I'm traveling at roughly ground speed 550 miles per hour in an aircraft at cruising altitudes. I don't ever have to change altitudes to go along with this supposed curvature of this spherical Earth. Number one, and number two, and so I would think that you would have to do that because there's this. And then number two, if I'm going along with the rotation of the Earth, it would be impossible for me to catch up to where my destination is, wouldn't it?
You have to take into account both gravity as well as atmospheric conditions. This is something that people don't necessarily consider. And I know this will be difficult for a flat earther, whoever you are that's listening, or if you've happened to subscribe now to the Flat Earth View.
Nope, I'm just here asking questions.
That's good. They're all good questions.
I want to see proof, because all I've seen is CGIs of this Earth, and I don't know why that is. If we've been there, I mean, why not just show me a real photograph?
Well, that's not true. That's not true.
You've got a real picture?
The atmosphere that you live and move and operate in, and you wave your arms around, you can feel the quote unquote wind on your hands, is as thick as the difference between outer space. I mean, you get roughly 100 kilometers up in its thickness, viscosity, however you want to describe it. The difference between the space environment, which people have wrongly labeled a vacuum, although in one sense that could be true, but there's so much matter out there, and so to speak. But the difference between the space environment and the atmosphere in which you live, move, and operate is as different as the atmosphere is from the depths of the ocean. It is so radically, physically different. And that reality actually drives Well, it drives the aerodynamics of our aircraft in the atmosphere, the way we create the wing on an airplane to generate the lift, based precisely on what we understand about the atmosphere. And it's why it doesn't generate as much lift and requires a great deal more thrust the higher up in elevation you get as that atmosphere thins. But you've talked about, why don't you have to change your altitude? Those things have to do with gravity. And let me, there's really a lot to unpack here. Maybe I'll come back and we'll talk about this for an entire
but because
segment.
Here, just very simply, this is your sphere. This is your sphere, right? I don't have one here. And it's spinning this way, allegedly, right, at 1080. Here comes my plane, right, at 500 miles per hour. Well, I'm going to this location. It's going to constantly go. So am I waiting for it to catch back up again so that I can land there? How can I ever catch something?
Well, these are really simple questions.
Yeah.
That people can find easy answers to. I mean, how come when you walk out your front door,
without
you're not
being
absolutely
scientifically
blown
gaslighted?
away? No, yeah. Well, how come you're not absolutely blown away by the rotation of the Earth at 1,080 miles an hour at the equator when you walk out your front door every day? Because you're in the calm of the ocean of our atmosphere. I mean, you are in a protective bubble that God placed there, by the way, for life and this particular ecology to flourish. Let me mention one other thing about the rotation of our Earth. There's a reason we prefer to launch our rockets into space from near equatorial latitudes. It's because the rotation of the Earth is faster at those latitudes. And we prefer to launch in the direction of the rotation of our Earth, which is counterclockwise, so that once you've escaped the atmosphere, not before, but once you've escaped the atmosphere, you've already got that 1,000 miles an hour of energy, of kinetic energy behind your arse as you exit the atmosphere into the vacuum of space. And so when these satellites get up there into low Earth orbit, they're traveling 17,500 miles an hour. A little bit more difficult feat to accomplish if you launch west against the rotation of the Earth. Again, that's not necessarily felt inside the atmosphere and immediately after launch, but it certainly makes a difference once you've exited the atmosphere and now have a relative speed differential to account for. And so if you're placing things in orbit, it takes less energy.
I mean, if you put a drop of water on a spinning top, it's going to fly off, right? So why, if the conditions are the same and the gravity is the same because it's on this spherical spinning phenomenon, why does the water fly off the top, but or the water in the oceans or the lakes or the rivers don't fly off of this sphere?
Yeah, I think a harder question for a flat earther to answer is the real conspiracy. There's a real conspiracy here, and the conspiracy is this: why do the forces of electromagnetism and gravity conspire all throughout the cosmos to make things spherical? Now, I'll tell you something that is flat. The Milky Way galaxy is extraordinarily flat. And everything that it's comprised of is incredibly round. In fact, I think I might be misremembering this. It's been a few years. But
I don't subscribe to the thing. Everything else is like this. I mean, that's like saying, well, all of the balls on the pool table are round, so is the cue, and so is the table. No, it's not. They're flat and they're long, and I mean, so I don't subscribe to it must be like everything.
Well, yeah,
else.
a hot dog is elongated and a hamburger is relatively flat. Well, they've been made and crafted that way.
Yeah,
I suppose you can make, and the pyramid is shaped differently and is not a sphere, but men made it that way. Now, or aliens, if you subscribe to that.
That's Tucker Carlson.
All I'm saying
I think Tucker
he's been on the alien kick recently.
He has. So
I'll tell you, I happen to believe that the Earth is an oblate spheroid. It's spherical. I think that God made it that way. I think that all of his creations throughout the cosmos seem to manifest that same apparent shape, at least from what we can observe, except you can get down to asteroids and other smaller objects that, they look a little bit more like rocks. They've got jagged edges and so forth. They're not as smooth and rounded. Once you get above about 1,000 kilometers in diameter, if I'm not mistaken, the forces of gravity, electromagnetism, and with liquid, surface tension, seem to coalesce to make things round in the cosmos. And we see that on the Earth as well. You know, very few things naturally become flat. We make a lot of flat things, but things aren't naturally flat unless some forces act upon them.
Once you go
a river
flat,
might make
you never go
once,
back.
Once you go flat, you never go back.
That's what I've been told anyways.
I'll
I'm
tell
not there
you,
yet.
You can't persuade me on this. Let me make one more point.
Yeah.
At the risk of, we're maybe going beyond time. I am utterly convinced of the beauty and symmetry, philosophically, religiously, and from a physics or scientific perspective, although we've not teased it out today, of a round Earth. I think it's lovely. I think you can understand scripture still with that worldview. And I'm happy to allow others to believe otherwise as well. But I find a lot of beauty in understanding how the orbits work. It isn't a conspiracy that we actually put things up in space and operate there. And in fact, while I've not been to space, I know people who have been to space. And so it's fascinating to hear their stories, see their experiences. And I have to ask if there's some grand your government may be conspiring against you in many, many ways. I don't deny that, but I don't believe it's conspiring against you to make you believe that the Earth is round.
Virtually everything they tell us is a lie. And when they start
Virtually
super early,
everything.
I mean, one of the first things you learn in kindergarten, first grade, the Earth is round, and they just pound this into you relentlessly.
Well, because it's true.
I question everything. I'm going to ask
That's
questions
good. That's
about
healthy.
everything.